Right. So I'm gonna make. I think we're live also on LinkedIn, but only Evolve members can interact with Edilsa. So
Yeah.
hello, everyone, for another Evolve Expert Sessions. And today I'm thrilled to introduce you to Edilsa Bueno, founder of Bueno & Co., a customer-centric consultancy dedicated to helping brands build meaningful relationships with their customers. Edilsa brings over 14 years of experience in customer insights, CRM, and loyalty, and customer-led innovation across a variety of consumer categories, including e-commerce, retail, luxury, consumer goods, lifestyle, tech, and financial services. As a senior strategy leader and advisor, she has established herself as a dedicated thought partner to brands and founders, adept at transforming and managing customer strategies and experiences. Her expertise in reshaping teams, platforms, and operations to be customer centric is unparalleled. Well, Edilsa will share her insights and experiences from her international background to her decision to focus on consumer brands. We'll delve into her journey, the challenges that she has overcome, and the innovative strategies she employs to help brands succeed. I would also like to extend our gratitude to our partners at AirMeet, whose platform makes our online events possible. So, Edilsa, welcome.
Thank
Um,
you so much.
very,
Long introduction. Hopefully, I can live up to it, but really
uh,
excited to be here.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
So I always start every session. It's I like to take these sessions like a blank slate, but there's always one question that I ask, which is the big picture. So Edilsa, how did we get here? Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah.
And
How did we get here? Long story, but super grateful for all the dots in my story. So, Edilsa in Spanish for any Spanish speakers out there, or um, currently first generation immigrant from Dominican parents, as some of you may know. But other things that have impacted me, my handicapped brothers, perseverance, the vibrant city of New York, where I was raised. I left the city at the age of 12, which is crazy to me, to pursue higher education. And the reason why I mention it is because I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to my mother. She recognized that there were bigger things ahead for me. And in totality, it's just a journey, made me resilient, made me agile, and it endlessly curious about people. And that's why I'm in the people business. And 14-year plus career now in investment banking, marketing strategy. Excited to talk to you guys more about it today.
Edilsa, thank you for sharing. You come
Mhm.
from like international roots,
Mhm.
which is something I relate to because my daughters, they are
Yeah.
very international, half Brazilian, half Dane or Danish. And the first time we spoke, you told me about your roots, your parents, like you
Yeah.
speak Spanish, and you also dabble in French, I guess, right? Which is amazing. So tell us a bit about your background and how that shaped you.
Oh, yeah, my background has been instrumental. Again, the primary thing I would say is it's opened me to these diverse thoughts, people, and experiences. Through it, I mean, again, I was a Dominican immigrant in a boarding school. I had to be a chameleon, adapt to a lot of people, learn to communicate, and so I owe a lot of my communication skills to that, to being able to, be raised in a Dominican household. Lots have 50 first cousins, so it's a big family and a fun family to be around. Um, and then I have all these parts, like growing up in investment banking and marketing strategy, and teaching my mom along the way what it means. She had no idea what it meant. Yes, 50. My mom has 13 brothers and sisters, and so does my dad. So it opens up a very big family.
How many? Sorry, how many?
50
So,
first cousins.
oh, wow,
Wow.
a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of chatter, a lot of people. Again, all it was such a fun household to grow in up in, and just taught me patience and communication and understanding, which I'm very grateful for.
And you, I mean, so you're bringing, you were uh, brought up in New York. What's the story
Yes.
there? Yeah.
So my parents immigrated in the 1980s. It's a tale as old as time. And so grew up in Harlem, New York City. For those who are familiar with it, a city girl through and through. I remember taking a bus by myself when I was 10 to my school 10 blocks down the road. Um, Absolutely love the energy of the city. I'm now in San Diego, so spoiler alert, no longer there, but very much going there all the time. There's the people that are there, the food, everything that's involved in New York. That I think Ron talked about it in one of his posts, that New York never leaves you, and that rings true.
Awesome. And Edilsa, so you uh, lead us through your journey. Like you start your career in finance, right?
Yeah.
And I think the first time we spoke, you were doing some research for Latin America, if I remember that right,
Spot on.
right? Given
Mhm.
your background and your international background, and but why finance? I mean, why? What led you to work in like banking and finance? And
I started out, so I was at Penn. Again, when you go to Wharton, there's one or two routes that you go to. Is either you go to consulting or you go to finance. And I was very energized by understanding what was going on around me. What were the macroeconomic things affecting our day to day, which led me to investment banking. Began my career. I think Gustavo, you said you're from Berlin, at a German investment bank, Deutsche Bank, and that was 15 years ago. Was an equity salesperson. So I was on the sales and trading floor. Crazy time pitching Latin American stocks. For those that remember that time, so much energy there in the potential growth in the market in Latin America. We had offices in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico. We were talking about Bradesco, Petrobras, Liverpool, Avianca. And from there, though, I wanted to have that fundamental skills of how to model. Like I wanted to be able to tell people what is the value of things, what does this mean, and so I moved on to equity research, where I was in a position where I get to launch an entire new sector. I remember writing like the 250 pages of a launch stock for five stocks, but marketing still really much remained looming as where I needed to go next. And the energy there being, I'd fallen in love with marketing very early. I was in um in uh college, and back there we had a laundry project. That was all things while I was at Wharton that led me to it. I had laundry problems, and that turned into a marketing project. And it was my first taste of solving real customer problems, and I absolutely loved it. And I knew that I'd do that at some point in my career.
uh, so you had a laundry project. What was that about?
We, there, you have when you're on campus, the little things that come up. They started to charge us. Then we use quarters, and so we were using quarters to fill up our laundry machine. And I wanted to change that. I was like, hey, there are problems that are happening. It's too expensive for us at the time, but I wanted marketing research. I wanted actual data to be able to tell people what was going on instead of feelings based, like this sucks. And so that's what led to it. So I had this problem happening in my everyday life. I was in a market research class at the time, and that tied itself to me making that my project.
It's very interesting that it seems to me that you like a lot of you like numbers a lot. Uh,
Love numbers.
Probably, right? And I think I saw somewhere in your profile that you're I'm not sure if you're a musician or if you like music also, because
I'm
I
an
think there's
artist.
yeah,
I'm an artist. Yeah.
artist, right? And it's
Mhm.
it's it's very interesting how your brain, let's say, works, right? Because you have the artistic side, but also the hard number or
Yeah.
mathematician side in your profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually painting became an escape from that. You need a compliment to be able to have a release to complete you. Part of my story is I actually took a sabbatical year last year. I decided to take the year off. I was traveling around the world to uh, all over Europe. I spent a month in Scotland, another month in Paris, another month in London. So really made my way around Europe at the time. And when I came back, I wanted to be able to do something that almost helped um, take apart the way my mind thought, which was abstract complexity. I deal with complex problems all the time. And I thought painting would be a huge release for it. It's almost kind of forces you to not have a perfect outcome at the end of it all. And so I love taking it up. There's so many layers in painting, and it just translates to how we should all approach problems. Nothing is going to be perfect at the outset. That's the closer we get to that acceptance, the faster we can get to please customers. But that's part of it. It was part of like the complementing my numbers and analytical side with the creative piece of release, and learning so much through that, how to deal with marketing and customer challenges along the way.
I promise we'll speak about the business side, but I find it the journey it's super
Yeah.
interesting. And so, um, how the sabbatical year helped you, like, I don't know, widen your view, or even probably like take the decision to open Bueno and Co.
Yeah, for me, it gave so much clarity. I think sometimes we don't give each other the time to just take a step back. Uh, what are our goals? Like what energizes us on an everyday? And the great thing is that I came out of this sabbatical year knowing that this was still my number one passion. Loved doing this, but I wanted to do it in a different way. So without having that space to kind of think, we're so in our day-to-day jobs that you sometimes don't you're following what other people are saying where you should go, you're following what you think is expected of you to go. But what if you take a step back and challenge yourself? How can I think bigger? um, and I think you can only think bigger with space, and whatever that means for you. If it was a sabbatical for me, it might
Mhm.
mean taking a Friday block every week and taking that time to, what am I trying to achieve? What are my goals? Where do I want to go? But that was what that year was for. Is I really wanted to reset and get clarity about where I could go bigger with these skills that I'd gained.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
easy. I think like in our club, we have quite a few professionals who are probably going through the same that you know the journey that you've been. I mean, and I think the first time we spoke about this, like we had very senior professionals in a club who were probably going through a career
Right.
transformation and transition, and the world is going through a very very interesting period with everything that's going on, and I think it moves people in a way, like energy,
Yes.
like so taking some time to think about, just to just to be more conscious,
Yes.
I think it's
I
very
love that
interesting.
happening.
Hmm. Pardon?
Yes. He said you need to have a happy place where you can take a step back and think, and I totally agree. Yeah.
um Edilsa, now going to your career
Yeah.
and the decisions that you took. So for example, you started in the financial market, and then you went to retail,
Yeah.
and you have this very strong analytical background, I think the words you used. And tell us about your career, how you developed your career, and then we'll speak about Amazon customer experience, and all of that jazz.
Yeah. Um, I I've spent years now guiding consumer brands like Amazon, Gap, SoulCycle, and it's really through their growth challenges through a customer lens, and that's reaching more customers. That's building these lasting, loyal relationships. Um, a couple of series of high-profile launches I've been a part of that I'm super proud of is bringing Prime Day at Shopbop, opening Saks Canada. I think Mark Tacunia is on the line, so he might know a little bit about that as well. And then launching loyalty programs, and that was at SoulCycle and Saks and Intermix and ShopBop. But the most proud one is so early. I felt like we really were challenging how loyalty was being thought of, monetizing it very much in this membership structure that Prime has done. And so I founded Bueno and Co. was to advise now growing brands. Like, how do I help growing brands think like Fortune 500, solve greater problems, get there, which I'm really excited for. But it was through a career of really learning uh, and being really pinned down into this love of customer strategy and having customers at the center. And that's what has been my compass throughout the whole time.
And talking about loyalty, then what's the? I mean, I think in the U.S. and
Yeah.
compared to Europe, and I'm gonna be very general in what I'm
Yeah.
saying, but Brazil, the U.S. I think we have very strong customer centric uh, cultures for different reasons. So in the U.S. I think there's a tipping culture as well. So, in some, let's say, in restaurants, for example, we don't have that in Brazil, but still, like you can expect good service. Whereas in Europe, I wouldn't expect as
Yeah.
high level of service as you would expect in the US. So speaking about loyalty, speaking of what are some of the challenges that you see today for the brands that you're working with when it comes to loyalty, when it comes to customer service, and how you're helping companies to be better at it.
I love that you put loyalty and customer service and experience all in the same sentence, because that's
Mhm.
actually what I'm very passionate about when I speak to loyalty with a big L. Is in digital commerce, I believe it's meaningful customer experiences that are essential for building lasting relationships. And there are many types of way you can deliver that. That's through great customer service, you mentioned. That's through a coveted customer experience. That's through timely promotions. And then another option is a rewarding loyalty program. And I think that's what loyalty makes it special, is that it allows you to deepen that engagement and drive the sustained behavior along the way. I mean, I worked for ShopUp, who was owned by Amazon, and you can just see it in their numbers. Amazon Prime is these members spend 4 times the amount of non-members. It's very valuable when you make customers feel seen, recognized, and heard. Now, talking back to your what the challenge is I just talked about meaningful, right? I think there's a lack of truly meaningful loyalty programs out there. And I think people have lost their purpose and why they're doing it. And I'm brought back when I was recently advising a client on loyalty programs, and the first line that they said was, "Oh, I want to get a loyalty program to establish credibility." This always gives me pause, right? So you're talking about how hard loyalty programs are to build. I was just reading an article on JCPenney, and it took about 250 unique assets to just build and launch this thing. It's a lot of hard work. It takes regulation. It takes creativity. And so I think when you want to build an experience that drives customer behavior. That's true innovation to me. You're inspiring a change in how they think. And that requires extensive understanding of the customer, getting close, aligning it to your vision, aligning it to your goals as a company. And I think that's what's missing today that I would love to see more. I think people are just trying to bring innovative loyalty programs that don't inspire a change, and would love to bring it back to being meaningful.
I think it's so interesting what you're saying because from like the conversations I had with Ron, for
Yeah.
example, who was at the front of retail expansion, and I mean, always training teams and so on. I mean, I don't see much difference because I mean, in order to build loyal employees, I mean, it's about respecting people and making them feel heard and appreciated. I'd
Yeah.
say it's like we're trying to build evolve, and it's a lot of work
Yeah.
just to be present and just to have one-on-ones and creating rituals and getting people to talk and trying to understand where trying to help have them understand our vision but also have them feel heard and so um I think there's a lot of talk about technology out there when it comes to loyalty, but the real basics, I think it's understanding. It's like understanding your customer, right?
Yes,
Understanding
yes.
who she is, what they want, and so tell me about that. I would love to to talk more about it. How do
Yeah.
you, if you were to have a roadmap, like your, and especially when we're looking at smaller brands or challenger brands, you know, where would you start?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to use the punchline, but it starts with the customer, and I think where you start is setting up an ecosystem that helps you understand the customer, and that is a product of people, talent, people who know how to analyze and understand customers. It also requires a technology. I think there's a lot of data. What the great thing about retail is you have a lot of data that you're capturing all the time, but then you don't know how to use it. And so having that right data structure, whether it's composable or not, having an AI integration or not, but what is the right thing that suits your company in terms of the technology? Those are really, really important. And then the third thing I would say is having a true framework for what makes actionable insights. And I think that to me, a lot of people just get out there to try to understand. They're like, okay, we know how they live. Uh, we know what their values are, but then they don't know what to do with it. It's because they're not tying it to some sort of actionable behavior. And so having those three things, I think, makes you really understand and then starts to be customer led. I think a lot of customer organizations are customer centric. So there's a lot of words there. There's uh, fill in the blanks on the chat: customer centric, customer driven, customer focused. But I actually think where companies needs to go is customer led. How are you where the customer goes, the market should follow, and how you build those systems to make customer led understanding will get you there.
You use the word, so before speaking about customer-led initiatives or and whatnot, you said ecosystem, which
Mm,
is when we were in our digital lounge.
yeah,
That's the word I used. Evolve is an ecosystem. You know, we have people from various areas of digital of commerce. We have
right,
logistics. We have, like, I believe in the ecosystem. I believe, getting the ecosystem in place is the way to go forward.
yeah.
So tell me about let's say a retail ecosystem. What is that like? What that looks like? Is it, you mentioned people, talent, but can you be more granular?
A retail ecosystem is what you referenced before. It's looking at the product. It's looking at the customer service. It's looking at how do you deliver loyalty. So I'll give you an example of out of my most recent former retailer where I actually decided to view loyalty with promotions, um, not separate. So a lot of retailers have a loyalty program, and then they'll have their friends and family out there. But really, what you're trying to do is reward customers. So at the end of the day, why is this pool of money getting separated when it really it's you're just trying to show up where the customer is and what they expect. So how do you deliver that service? How do you deliver that reward in a way that makes sense instead of thinking I'm doing customer service separate from loyalty, or I'm doing this, customer CX change separate from loyalty. Those things live together. Shipping was an incredible loyalty driver for us at Shopbop. Uh,
Mhm.
and so that doesn't sometimes lives outside of a loyalty program and inside of a loyalty program. So that again, I think it's just making sense of how do these things live together in a way that makes sense to your customer. And then if you put that together, then it becomes this funnel of sustained engagement. But I think so many companies are siloed. They start to think about
Mhm.
these things separately, and that's why I use the word instead of loyalty program, it's a loyalty ecosystem for me. I can't hear you. It's people hear him.
Can you hear me
Yes,
now? Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Sorry, I said it's kind of like when customer companies said, "Oh, we have really an idea of creating an innovation department," and they're
Yes.
completely separated from reality, right? And they have no clue whatsoever I mean,
Spot
what the company needs, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I still, I mean, can you share some recent examples or some recent business cases of loyalty programs that you've been implementing or helping your customers with?
Yeah, I think there's been examples of both in and out. And I actually will want to talk about this one about international because I think international is actually a really interesting piece of loyalty that is I feel like not talked about, but it's how it's set up in CX and the program itself. But US brands typically, even when they're international and have offices, don't actually have their loyalty program set up to reward international customers. They're all set up to reward US and maybe Canada. I think for me, as you think of loyalty and expected customer experience, that's another challenge that I had as I built loyalty programs is how are we more inclusive? We haven't gotten there, to be honest. I pushed recent companies to be more inclusive. We launched a category without it being available to international customers. We launched a program without it being available to international. But I think that's where I feel like sometimes companies enter a market and don't think of how to make those markets loyal. And so that piece of kind of building that loyalty ecosystem in and outside of the US is something that I really want to push for as we go in.
Yeah, I'm inviting some of our
Yep.
members to join
Yep.
us on stage. So Dominic is coming from Canada, is very active, and I always like uh, to invite our active members to ask you questions, as I told you earlier, as we spoke earlier. Dominic, you've been in you've been working for Elastic Path, and as you said, 25 plus years in commerce. So perhaps you have a few questions. Being a Canadian, also Italian or Canadian Italian, right? Canadian forward slash Italian.
Italian Canadian, yeah,
Italian
Italian Quebec
Canadian,
Canadian. I don't know how,
right?
but thanks for putting it on a thing that's like 25 plus years. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy about that.
It means your
No,
experience.
I love what you're saying. And this, my challenge always with loyalty programs is the fact that I always find that organizations that do not have a loyalty ecosystem are pretty much short-lived organizations. Price point competition is so strong
Yeah.
in every type of environment, and without having a type of a loyalty setup, whether it be on a customer front, whether it be on a B2B or B2C or so on and so forth, right? Loyalty is key. So I guess one of my questions is, when you're looking at an organization to set up a loyalty ecosystem, and you're obviously, as part of that loyalty program or loyalty ecosystem, you're faced with the challenge of putting a budget behind it, putting a monetary number behind it, because those are obviously, companies are saying, yeah, I really want the loyalty program set in place, but I only have $20,000 to whatever to invest into this, right? What are the three main, I guess, key items that you want to base out putting on a budget system? Like, when you're looking at setting up a program, right? You're looking at, you have the low hanging fruit, what are quick hits, and what are some longer standing items?
Yeah. Such a great question, Dominic, because it comes up in every single loyalty program as you're going out. You think of the idea and then you see the budget associated, and it's shocking, right? And so that's a big thing of why I say pool all the money together that is meant to reward. So, how do you think of a framework that is what are we trying to achieve here? So, I have challenged and successfully companies to look at the customer experience budget with the loyalty budget, with the promo budget, and what's the customer service budget. What that creates is, what are we doing to motivate delight? It's one pool of money. Let's break it up. I think as loyalty becomes very complex if you're talking about a program. To your point, one of the big things I do is based on meaningful behavior, I'll prioritize the phase out the program. And so that's a big part of it, but it's not just low hanging fruit, it's meaningful. So I will actually push for companies to invest in the meaningful behavior, because if you're trying to change, if you're trying to actually have a step change in growth, and you're addressing something that's driving 5% versus something that's driving 25%, what are we doing here? So I think it's really using that meaningful framework to phase out the program, but stepping outside of it is to take a look at the pool of money together, and have a budget associated to it. And then I think it's really bringing people up front. So a lot of summits, a lot of offsites, to be able to discuss the shared goal of it coming up front. But those would be three things that I prioritize as I'm trying to get this line item through through the finish line.
Cool. And another quick question. You're mentioning before with regards to loyalty programs being set up internationally, globally versus nationally, right? Um, have you been able, or has there been circumstances where you've actually collated the data from the customer and saying, and the customer had one site, they're saying, I just want to go nationally, United States or Brazil or so on and so forth, right? And based on the collation of data, you're saying, well, look, if you set this up globally, you're going to be hitting X more percent rather than just doing that. Have you been able to get some of those circumstances together?
I will say that's been very challenging, just because I think the additional regulations and compliance, shipping costs associated with getting a lot of these rewarding through. So what I've done is localized the loyalty program. And
Mhm.
so I've built loyalty structures within each. So through work with my team in the Middle East, realized that personal styling was a huge motivator for people in the Middle East. How do we actually hire personal stylists that are helping our customers there shop and understand and build that one-to-one relationship? uh, in China at Intermix, we had a very loyal customer out there. Instead, we decided to fill the loyalty gap by creating a dedicated gifting program for frequent Chinese customers. And so having that helped again, but it was localized. We had people on the ground that could deliver, that would reduce the shipping costs associated, that would help personalize and regionalize the program so that at that time, customers felt like, you were speaking to me. So that was my big strategy. I think things are floated: localization, globalization, regionalization. I at that end of the day ended up localizing these programs to be able to deliver on loyalty.
Thank you.
Have you
Uh,
had an experience that you've seen it being properly globalized? Because I'm still on the hunt for that.
I have had, I mean, I've had experience on that and multiple retailers out there. I'm not going to mention which ones, right? From my SAP days and from my IBM encounters, we've had a lot of experience on that. And essentially, the way I've seen it done, and again, in certain circumstances, is that a global template was set up in terms of setting up an overall loyalty framework or loyalty ecosystem. And then that template basically would drill down to the actual specific regions, as you're saying, and then have more of a specialized flavor per region, but following that one main global template.
Yeah.
So I've seen that occur. It has been challenging because one of the challenges I've seen is that the overall budget associated global, right? Once it
Yeah.
goes down to region, there were certain areas that obviously came out of the blue, and that would just increase budget exponentially.
Yeah.
So at that point there, then you're phasing out the regions, right? So instead of saying we're going to do this in 10 regions or 15 regions, you're now bringing it down to 3 or 4 because the budget just went out of control.
Yeah. Budget is huge. I love the idea of the global template and brief. Just brings so much structure to it.
Yep.
Mhm.
but when you're starting a loyalty program, do you think you should start with, well, maybe you have some structure and some guardrails in that sense, but as a builder, I tend to be a bit chaotic in the way I'm building things, and Gustavo is the guy saying, hey, hold on, man, we let's put some structure here. And I mean, our club is different, but in a way it's not, right? We're so what's your take on this when you're building the program, Edilsa?
When you're building a program, you have what I found successful has always been keeping the room small, but then engaging people at critical points. And the reason why is um, helping understand what are the key stakeholders, reducing noise, kind of allowing yourself to innovate. When you have a lot of people in the room, there's a lot of but oh, we can't do it. Instead, you become energized because you're in a small group innovative hub. But then I do think you need to then loop in critical stakeholders and be bringing them along the way. Why? You have some things where, again, you launch a product and you can't release it in China because you didn't think about it in time, and somebody could have told you on the buying side. And so I think having these close networkers. There's somebody from technology, somebody from project management, somebody from loyalty, somebody from customer insight, somebody from finance, all in the room to hash out and think through it. I think the other success point about bringing things through is just thinking through then how to close it. And so that's where Dominique's point about budget. Budget is almost at the beginning for me always. I just always want to keep this line item of the budget because people think really, really big. And then it becomes so small because budget becomes a constraint. So I don't want to let budget be a constraint, but I do want it to be an FYI for me at any sort of point. And so how to bring it home requires you to do that phased framework and really sell people and be a team player because other people have priorities too. So those are a few things along the way to kind of bring that idea home and see it through.
All right, thank you. So Hawan, he has an e-commerce implementation agency. We might have a few questions for you as well.
Yeah.
Hello again, Edilsa. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your experiences. I was making some notes while you were talking, and I found really interesting that you shared um, some results about the Prime in Amazon, how much it impact in the sales, for how much the consumer spends with the brand. So if you have any other case or some numbers that, of course, that you can share
Yeah.
with us. And also, I'd like to the second question would be, um, you talk about the loyalty. It's always it has a great connection with discount in Brazil. I would say recently, the last couple of years, maybe 1 year and a half, 2 years, we saw a growth, a really big growth in the rebates, so money back strategy. Before, all the loyalty programs were only based in giving discounts, and
Yeah.
now we have a lot of rebates. How do you see also this strategy? It's interesting. Have you tried that before?
Yeah. So I did give a publicly available number for Amazon to not reveal any secrets. So unfortunately, can't. But I think that just shows you just the value of that, and just saying that again, we saw that come through at Shop Up as well, who's owned by Amazon. Amazon at large. And I feel like really exciting to see those numbers when you think of just what it could do. To Dominique's point, the cost that comes associated then starts to outweigh some of the benefit. And so you really need to know your numbers when you're going in and selling loyalty as you go along the way. But I think your second question was about discount and rebates. So interesting. this journey that loyalty has gone through in terms of what works and what not. I was at a former fashion brand who's really wanted to, everyone wants to be profitable these days, move away from discounts. And I think it's not discounting that is the issue. It's rewarding the wrong customers or the wrong way of the discount. So I think that's why cashback and rebates has become a huge thing, because you're actually incentivizing the right behavior. You're going in and saying, you're actually engaging with us. We're going to get you a future trip versus the biggest thing was, why are we giving these discounts to VIP customers when they would spend with us anyway? So how do you build this structure that's a combination of partnerships, events, access, convenience, and spend the dollars in the right way. But I do think even when push comes to shove, these programs always default on some sort of nominal discount. In some ways. So I don't think that's going away. I feel like every single time that people try to become non-promotional, it really doesn't work. And so I do think that just knowing what you want to incentivize is important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
James, welcome. Perhaps you have a few questions to Edilsa.
Yeah. Is my video on?
It is
Nope.
not.
There it is. All right. Thanks, Edilsa. Yeah, I just wanted to take this up a level from a loyalty kind of perspective. We saw things like Tractor Supply recently, who made some comments around DE&I. Right. We've seen others like Target who've changed their stances on things. Wondering your comments on, from a loyalty perspective and loyal customers, in terms of statements around ESG, around DE&I, in terms of corporate values, and what impact that has on loyalty. Because as much as you try and build a great loyalty program, right, it can all be derailed from these other statements. And so, just wondering what your viewpoints are from loyal being some of what the company stands for.
Yeah. A brand identity is a huge thing. And so whenever we ran surveys, the thing that motivated the most is, who was the brand I was associated with. I was shocked in reading some of these surveys that people would say they would leave because of DE&I or ESG issues, and then they would still stay, which to me means there's something else. I think convenience often overrides the value system, to be honest. I think this is why people use Amazon, regardless of what they think of Amazon. It's easy, it's convenient, and it's personalized to you. And so I do think that it is a factor in terms of who you want to associate with, but I haven't seen it be a make or break. I've seen convenience be the make or break for people. I don't know if you found the same, James.
Well, yeah, certainly there's news around these things. Some people, it
Yeah.
affects some people in terms of who they want to be associated with and who they want to choose to spend their money with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm saying, when, because another part of loyalty program,
Yeah.
beyond just kind of points and promotions, is, am I closer to the brand in some way, right? Am I able to provide input? Am I able to provide feedback that perhaps a regular customer can't, and thus I can be heard more than others? That can be one of the perks and benefits of being part of a loyalty program, so that I can get closer to the brand, right?
Yeah. Ambassador programs are huge, where they can advocate. We had panels that VIP customers were always part of, that they felt like they could actually create the product, create the brand. And having, to your point, having that co-creation, that is like so powerful for customers. And that goes back to being customer led. When you take it up a notch, and it's not just that customers feel rewarded, but that they're also creating with you, it creates this level of stickiness that you can't buy. But I feel like one thing I'm hearing is, it's all these things that are going on. It's what are you trying to accomplish? ESG? Is it D&I? Is it convenience? Is it advocacy? And I think as you go through it, the hard part for companies is that they have to prioritize. And so you have to push and shove and see where things fit the most.
Right. Thanks.
Mhm.
I mean, so many insights, and for me, like I'm very interested because we're building the club, and I like to think that we are co-creating the club. So it's a long-term project, endless work. I really enjoy it. Now, do you see clubs also? Because you mentioned a lot of things that are very particular to clubs, and I see a big rise in clubs and communities. I mean, I see so many of them getting Soho House just arrived in Brazil and stuff like that. And then as part of the clubs, you have also an opportunity to do collaborations. When you have a club with a bunch of members, a lot of people there, right? Then you start to have muscles, like to get to other interesting companies and also do more collaborative stuff. How do you see first clubs, as in if they're trendy or not, and the opportunity that they eventually provide for their members and to create more loyalty and things like that? Do you see that?
I mean, it's such a great tool for ambassadorship. So you're talking about a tool of things you can consider. One thing that was interesting to me, I was advising a beauty retailer, and one of the things that came up was they talked to me. The feedback was, "Hey, customers love us. They come in, they're saying like, how do we build? How do we get closer to people?" But then I saw that in the survey, they did not express that, right? So 30% actually did not want a community. So they wanted to be loyal to the brand. They loved the brand. They were advocates of the brand. But when it came down to actually engaging in a community, that wasn't what they meant by what they wanted in a community. So they wanted to be able to be associated with everyone, but they didn't want to be active. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things that's really, what does community mean is so important in loyalty, to suss out what do people actually want. Is it to be a part of something together? Is it to participate in something together? Is it to create together? And really kind of sussing out what that difference is really comes down. Love that, James. Knowing your customer segment and what they value. 100%. So knowing that ICP and really just understanding what people want, then doesn't leave you into misguided attempts, because then you interpret community as, let's say you interpret community as like active participation, and then you're saying, why did this not work? And it's because that's not what your niche or segment wants. And so really understanding that piece is super important.
But there's this is very interesting because there's what customers say, and that's and what they do, right? Jesus,
I love this.
as you were saying,
Yeah.
there's what people say, and then there's what they actually do, and those are different worlds, and we are all
Here's a hot take on that. So here's a hot take, and it's like, I actually believe customers are always right. And the reason is that there is a difference between what customers say and what they do, but we are responsible for being interpreters of what they actually mean.
right.
So I actually think along the way, they're actually telling you, giving you signals. So they're giving you signals that are at the forefront and under below, but they're actually really saying it, quote unquote, even if it's not. And so like our responsibility is to break that down. What do they mean? What do they actually want? And how do I get that signal that like maybe like it's not what they're doing, but they're actually always saying it. And so I think sometimes people get personally get confused that it could be that they don't know what they want. I actually do think that they always know what they want. It's just our job to kind of be that the mediator.
I love it. I love it. Gents, we're for the most part, gents. Would you like to ask any other questions? You're very welcome. I'll give you 1, 2, 3. All right. Edilsa, we will wrap this up. So perhaps some final considerations on the importance of loyalty, and then I'd love if you could also leave your contact information if people want to find more about you and work with Edilsa, be part of your ecosystem. I love that you touched upon ecosystem today. So, but perhaps some final considerations on loyalty, and we'll wrap this up.
Oh man, I think so many learnings from the small to medium-sized businesses that I worked from, and I think one thing I'll say is a lot of people think that they're so different, but what I realize is that their challenges are the same and just at a different scale. So I'm with a client right now who asked me, do I walk away altogether from e-commerce and focus on opening more local stores? That's how their budgets are tighter, right? Those are the big decisions that they need to make, right? In so many ways, this mirrors what a large company is doing when they enter a new geographic market. And I would say in both cases, the same question holds. Does your customer already love the brand? Are you winning? Is your product doing well? Is your brand doing well? And I think so many people, both large and small, are focused on expanding and not actually looking at what their customer is pointing them to or what they should be doing. And so how do you keep that compass of, am I winning? And how do I double down on where I'm winning? We had very unfortunate closures and some at a former fashion brand in China and Russia, and that was really the result of that work not being done. So that's just what the parting thought that I wanted to do is like that thought. Are you actually listening? Are you having your customers that love the brand? Are you focused? And focus doesn't mean that you can't grow, but it means that you know. And so just having that approach, I feel like will pay dividends as companies grow, both large and small.
Lovely.
Mhm.
Well said.
Yeah.
It was amazing to have you on today. So if our folks, our community, and strangers want to know more about you, what's the best way?
So I'm on LinkedIn. My first name, last name, Edilsa Bueno. And that's more of just sharing my journey, sharing my lessons and experiences learned along the way. And now that I'm working with multiple brands at the same time, I get to see from a big picture what's going on, which is really fun. Instead of just being focused on one. So you'll see me sharing those trends that are like across sectors, across businesses. And then if you want to follow my personal journey of building the brand, what's behind the scenes of being an entrepreneur, I also have an Instagram at Bueno Consulting that you can follow. But both will be great, and so excited to see you guys all there.
Put that on the show notes on YouTube. You bet.
I will.
All right. So that was it. Thanks, everyone. Thank you,
Thank you
Edilsa.
so much.
Thanks, guys. Amazing to have you on once again. Bye.